Hey guys, in this video I am gonna be showing you how to build Kazuha as a secondary or sub DPS. I'll be going over his kit, skill sets, and show you how to properly and effectively build him. I will also be recommending his artifacts or stats that you should aim for to properly build Kazuha. And finally, recommend weapons and 3 interesting team compositions that you should definitely use as a reference. Kazuha is an incredible support or sub DPS that utilizes crowd control skills paired up with passive damage buffs for his party. Because of his skill sets and utility, you have the option to fit him easily into essentially any party comps that you can think of. I'll cover and go over more specifics later on in this video. First, I want to compare and contrast Kazuha's kit to Sucrose. A lot of people compare him about how he is worse than Sucrose when they don't even work the same way. Think of it this way. Kazuha is supposed to be a support that Sucrose cannot. For example, in a freeze comp, Sucrose is not viable, but Kazuha boosts freeze comp's damage output. Sucrose is used for reaction teams, and Kazuha is used more in non-reaction teams. This isn't to say that Kazuha cannot be used in reaction teams, though. When we take a look at his skill later on, you will be able to find out. Moving on to his normal and charge attacks. I don't really need to go over it at all. It's basically the same as with all sword characters. However, Kazuha have 2 types of plunge attacks. The normal plunge attack is the same as any other character. You strike the ground and deal AoE upon impact. However, Kazuha has a different type of plunge. That is when he uses his elemental skill, which I will cover later on. Basically, if you use his elemental skill, it brings enemies in and launches Kazuha into the air. He can then follow this up with a plunge attack, which will be converted to anemo damage. So basically, his second plunge, you need to incorporate his elemental skill for it to work. A very important thing to note is that this attack, even though it incorporates Kazuha's elemental skill, it is still considered plunge attack damage. Moving on to Kazuha's elemental skill. So this skill have 2 functions. One is a press mode and a hold mode. This skill can pull enemies in towards Kazuha's position before launching opponents with an AoE, then lifting Kazuha into the air. Hold mode charges up before striking, dealing higher anemo damage over a larger AoE than press mode. From what we covered earlier, this skill sets up Kazuha's special plunge attack. For his elemental burst, Kazuha unleashes a very large AoE revolving around him. This anemo AoE will infuse itself with the first element it hits, taking 5 times. If it is infused with other elements, it will deal additional elemental damage alongside its DOT. Kazuha's passives, in my opinion, is what separates him from the likes of other anemo characters. A lot of people compare him to Venti in his crowd control, Sucrose's buff, or Xiao's DPS, but he is not supposed to be played like a Venti, a Sucrose, or a Xiao. His 4th ascension passive, Poetics of Fubutsu, provides your team with a 0.04% elemental damage bonus to the corresponding element for every elemental mastery he has for 8 seconds upon triggering a swirl reaction. This passive still needs more testing because Kazuha is still very new, but this passive will buff teams not running a reaction comp for sure. Like I said earlier, freeze comp can benefit greatly from this. Another passive of his, Soulman Swordsmanship, allow Kazuha's elemental skill to infuse with elements that it comes in touch with. It will deal an additional 200% attack of the absorbed elemental type as damage, and this will be considered plunging attack damage. This is really a big deal and is a very good passive that will boost Kazuha's damage as a sub DPS for sure. Now let's talk about Kazuha's artifacts. Since you can essentially put Kazuha in any party, he definitely have a variety of different artifacts to choose from. I'm gonna go over a few general ones and 2 niche ones. The first set that I recommend is Forset Viridescent Veneer. I'm gonna say VV from now on to save some time, cause that's too hard to pronounce. It gives valuable elemental resistance decrease that will pair up well with his 4th ascension passive. This is also the most versatile and cream of the crop set that you can easily slot him into many teams. This set, however, doesn't work with Geo or Anemo comps. Another general choice that you can throw on Kazuha is 2-piece Gladiator, 2-piece VV set. This combination allows you to focus more on Kazuha's damage output, but the downside is it gives up the 4-set Viridescent VV elemental res. If you run Kazuha as more of a sub DPS, I will go for this build. A 2-piece VV, 2-piece Noblesse is also a viable choice if you want to go for a pure burst build. Also, if you don't have any other support in your lineup, with 4-piece Noblesse you can make it work by putting it on Kazuha, but only do that if you don't have anyone with 4-piece Noblesse. For a more niche set, the 4-piece Blizzard Slayer is extremely strong, but will only be restricted to a freeze comp. Also, this is for more of a main DPS Kazuha, so I'm not going to go too in depth about it. There are a couple of stats that you can choose depending on how you want to build Kazuha. You should aim for anemo damage on Goblet, crit rate or elemental mastery on Hat, and attack percent or elemental mastery on Timepiece. For sub DPS Kazuha, go for attack percent Timepiece and crit rate on Hat. For Kazuha's weapons, I'm not going to recommend any 5-star weapons this time, but just know that they're all viable, so if you have a 5-star sword, don't hesitate to use it on him. The first weapon I'm going to recommend is the Iron Sting. It is one of the most versatile weapons for a sub DPS or support Kazuha. It is easily accessible and its elemental mastery substat provides you with flexibility and allows more options on your artifact stats. The weapon passive is also really strong, increasing damage when you deal elemental damage. The Lion's Roar is also another great weapon that have a high peaking damage compared to all the other 4-star swords. The attack substat makes it so you can go for elemental mastery in your timepiece. However, you are more limited to using pyro or electro teams. If you want to spam your elemental burst, the Favernous Sword works well where you can have the ability to gather energy fast from its substats and elemental particles. However, it is one of the lowest damage out of all the 4-star weapons. Lastly, the Harbinger of Dawn is a weapon that gives a large boost to both crit stats. It is really easy to get Refinement 5 as well, and works brilliantly for a sub DPS and support Kazuha if your HP is above 90%. Kazuha can be built around many different kinds of teams. If you have any questions regarding team comp, feel free to leave a comment below. I'm gonna give a few ideas that you guys can reference. The first team is the Double Section team, which composes of Klee, Kazuha, Sucrose, and Diona. You got Klee throwing bombs into an anemo vacuum that will restrain enemies like the black hole. Imagine the enemies restrained while bombs are going off around them. Another team you could go for is the Ganyu Melt comp, which consists of Ganyu, Kazuha, Sucrose, and Bennett. This is a pretty standard comp where Ganyu is the main carry and Kazuha and Sucrose act like the cheerleaders that superglue enemies in place, while Ganyu takes shot after shot at helpless enemies trapped in the middle of quicksand. The last team I am gonna recommend is a Freeze Shadow comp of Changyun, Shinchu, or you can insert Mona here, Kazuha, and Diona. If you prefer restraining enemies, freezing them to death rather than stuck in a black hole getting executed by Ganyu, this comp is for you. But this time, you get to break the ice sculptures that you craft by swinging a big sword around. Alright, that's basically all I have for you guys today. If you like the video, please make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications. I have a few videos planned out for you guys when the update hits, so if you want to keep up with my content, subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.